Well, hello there. It's Robert Ohado now, and tonight's Social Live, we're going to be talking all about karma. So, what are your ideas of karma? I mean, have you ever noticed how bad karma doesn't seem to catch up with the people putting it out there? Does it seem like it doesn't come back around? How about someone in your life? Anyone ever do you wrong and seems like they didn't get what their comeuppance was supposed to be? What about that good karma? Where's it? Is it coming back to you? Does it feel like, no, it's MIA? Where's that good karma I've been putting out there my whole life cycles? Is karma just a simple law of cause and effect? Is that all there is? Is it a law that's punitive? Does it punish us when we are bad people and reward us when we're good people? If we're supposed to get what we give, well, has your good karma been coming back to you? Has your bad karma been coming back to you? You know, what about divine intervention? Where does that play out in karma? Like, what about, can the gods, if you will, intervene and wipe out our karmic debts and wipe out our karmic entanglements with other people? And by the way, do you got a few of those? You got some karmic entanglements with other people? Well, we are going to be talking all about this in this Friday Social Live. In fact, you know, you do hear this saying all the time, you know, karma's a bitch. What goes around comes around. But does it really? Does it really? Now, if I were to walk you through the world and show you the billionaires who have made their money, you know, destroying the environment, well, where's the bad karma for them? They're sitting on piles of cash. What about all the people that get away with crimes, murders, and then walk away scot-free? And then innocent people get put in prison all the time. So I think you kind of see where I'm headed with this. Karma is such, really, in a sense, a juicy topic, but it is far, far more complex than you've ever imagined, I guarantee you. And while it is at its core a law of cause and effect, dimension to dimension of your life, I have learned it does work differently. So you might want to say, well, hey, you know, Robert, here's how it goes. It's just you reap what you sow. End of story. I'm going to actually tell you, you know what? That's actually the beginning of the story. So if you want to know more, if you want to know how do you get out of karmic entanglements with other people, if you want to know, can you change your karma? What does it take to change your karma? What even really is karma? If we're not interpreting it through some shame-based, wrathful religious god, or some shame-based, wrathful spirituality that has laws in it, like laws of attraction, that, you know, if you're good, you get good. If you're bad, you get bad. What's the difference between that and a damning, wrathful religious god? Is there any at all? Well, stay with me. This is Friday Social Live, and we are talking about karma. Why? What goes around doesn't, in fact, always come around. So tonight we're going to talk about karma. And I want to first just kind of frame where these insights come from and why I'm saying what I'm saying. I know it's sort of contrarian, perhaps a little bit of a thought reversal. I think most of us have thought, right, that karma is really about you get what you give, you get what you put out there, the law of cause and effect. Yeah, and actually, to be honest, I'll tell you right now, that is a facet of it for sure. That is part of its law. But over the time that I was doing readings on people, intuitive readings professionally, I began to see a new story unfold. And I'm going to guide you into some pieces around that story. Now, I actually created an online audio course called Change Your Karma, Change Your Life about 10 years ago on this topic, in which I chronicled and really put into this course a lot of these insights that I'm going to pull forward in this Social Live. And it was such a powerful journey for me to kind of collate everything that I had seen. And as an intuitive, I've always felt that I've been a reporter in the field of consciousness. I'm just watching phenomena in people, in us, in life. And I probably just like you had just assumed that, if we kind of go to where the idea of karma comes from, that it was just really about cause and effect and working off karma to get off the wheel of, in Buddhist terms, incarnation, or Hindu terms. Oftentimes there's a notion that, enlightenment, there's a path to freedom of some kind. Now, really, the same idea exists in all world religions. It's, pay for your sins through Christ's redemption. If we go to Christianity, and Judaism has a form of this, in which, not through Christ, obviously, but in which we can enter the gates of Eden and all is well done, don't have to come back, right? Well, that's not how it works, near as I can tell. And I'm here to share with you some insights. And so why should you care? I mean, you really should care. And the reason why I think that this is so important, one, personally, I mean, how can you begin to master your own karma? And how do you change that karma? How do you do that? How do you actually change forces that, yes, perhaps you, but not just you, have set in motion that now are co-creating your life? We do every day, whether we're conscious or not, make decisions, choices, take actions, whether they're reactive or conscious, that generate consequence. That is part of the learning karma offers. Now, you may tell me, hey, well, Robert, I left religion ages ago. And if I'm in a kind of religious orientation, it doesn't import this idea of the gods or God smiting me down for misdeeds. So I'm not sure I'm buying into what you're saying about karma and, and me believing it's a punitive system. I don't believe it's a punitive system. And I'm going to tell you, I would bet money that you do. As soon as you say karma's a bitch and watch someone get, have a karma accident, as they're sometimes called, I just caught you in what you really believe. As soon as you start to wonder, why isn't karma smacking down some of these toxic, awful people in the world that do horrific things and profit from it? Where's karma there? And do we indeed transmigrate karma, like this sort of, bank account of good deeds, misdeeds, from one lifetime to the next? Well, I'm going to take you on a tour that's very, very fascinating. And there's a lot of both and in the tour ahead. And there are a lot of things that I would say you may sense about karma just intuitively that are right spot on. Let me first just start by saying that karma indeed without a doubt, is a co-creative cosmic law that here on Earth, in this dimension, we do work with. I mean, this is in your face every day. This is in every choice you make every day. So you have a job. You can either get out of bed and go to that job and generate income or whatever you do, create something at that job or whatever it is, or you can stay in bed and get fired. There are consequences for everything we decide, every, even to some degree, attitude we hold or perception we hold, every belief we harbor generates some sort of consequence in us. Now, the consequences, however, manifest in different ways based on the level of karma we're dealing with. There's different levels and types of karma. There's the karma of me just, throwing this pin up in the air and it coming back down because there's something called gravity that pulls on it, and my action of throwing it up, the karma of that pushes it into the air, but then the laws of gravity, another law, bring it right back down. There's the karma of you eat food, your digestive system and subconscious autonomic system begins to digest that food and turn it into cell nutrition and, your hair and your nails and whatever else, new muscle fiber. So we have this law everywhere. It's like fascia that runs through everything that we know about life. But here's the thing where I have to say there's more to karma than meets your beliefs. Because if you were to say, hey, we do reap what we sow, what you put out comes back to you, the things you've heard about karma, these slogans, the karma slogans we've all heard. If you do good things, they're going to come back to you. And not only that, you'll also attract to yourself good things. It's not just that I do good things. It's just, what I also do, I think positively. I have a positive focus. I have perhaps vision boards or mantras on my mirror or affirmations around my house that help me generate and continue to focus my awareness on a positive focus. And then I'd go, okay, why are you doing that? And you might say, well, because I want to create a positive energy so that I can attract positive things to me. And I would say, well, do you believe that's really how, first of all, the laws of magnetic attraction work? Secondly, do you believe that what you're doing actually can generate that kind of power? Is there anything else in your life, anything, and this is a question for you to consider right now. Is there anything else in your life that could eclipse and override positive psychology or your affirmations or vision boards? Can you think of anything? Or do you truly believe that, and this isn't about being right or wrong, we're going in curious together to understand a law, a cosmic law, karma, from a completely new lens. And there's a huge payoff for that, which I'm going to get to. But what I want you to consider is, okay, do you really believe that? That you are, and I'm going to start using more qualifying language here to riff around in the question. And I want you to watch yourself as I pivot through this and what starts to come up for you. This is about you. I always feel as an intuitive and now teacher, I'm teaching you to read yourself. Exactly what I'm guiding you to do right now with karma. To read your beliefs around it and to become curious as to whether or not those are true. And if they're not true, what's the consequence for believing in something that's not true? So, okay, do you believe that a positive focus, positivity, vision boards, is going to somehow generate a karmic, energetic force field, maybe, attractor field, maybe, that will bring to you good things? Okay, so see where you're at in that question. I'm going to flip this and say, now, does that then conversely mean that you believe if you focus on dark or negative things, whatever you would decide or qualify those are as being whatever they are, does that mean that if you focus on that stuff, you in turn will attract to you dark and negative things too? Because if you're going to presuppose in your beliefs that a positive focus or a positivity will karmically set you up in some kind of good karma, as we would call it, really, right? Then you have to sort of in that duality and polarity also believe, right, that negative things set you up in the opposite direction. Now, I'm going to ask you, is that actually really true? Now, you may go, I don't know. It's a trick question. Or how do I feel it coming? Totally cool. Hang with where we are and with what I'm going to do from here. The thing I want to just impress upon you right now, I'm on one threaded belief about karma, just one. And what I've discovered is karma is both and super simple and absolutely incredibly complex. Both are true. So now, if you check in with your core beliefs here, and you say, well, yeah, I think good things come to those that put out good things into the world. I want you to qualify. What's a good thing then for you? Would you say that's a lot of money, good health? Would good things be a great sense of connection and community? What would be a good thing? Now, I'm going to sidebar and make an observation here that what I've seen people mostly qualify as good things tend to be things like financial abundance, health, that ideal, awesome soulmate, twin flame type relationship there's a whole bunch of things that people would qualify as good things that good karma generates. And so I'd go, okay, I'm not saying that's not true, but I'm also going to say I'm not so sure it's the truth. Because I can take you around the world and we can meet and greet billionaires worldwide who've made much of their money destroying the planet, invading countries, starting wars. And they're doing just fine with good things. Not only do they own, I don't know, a countryside mansion, they own a yacht. So where's karma there? Where's your belief in karma there? Where's your belief? Where does the calculus for your belief in karma go there? Or something like the law of attraction. Where's the calculus there? And let me just embellish this a bit more. They're in perfect health. They do dark things in the world, and they're in absolutely perfect health. So do you believe they're generating a karma that is going to come around to them? And then, okay, let's say you do believe that. Well, then what does that mean? What does that look like? How would you suppose that kind of karma would come around? Now, I'm approaching this. Let's just get on the ground level of Earth School, because this is Earth School ground zero, looking around at cosmic, universal, co-creative laws and trying to figure it out. So some part of our intuitive system goes, doing things that harm others, I will harm me. And I would say that's absolutely accurate, because we're all interconnected, all is one, mystical truth, boom. But when we start to then go into these different arenas and then calculate how a certain law might work and establish it as black and white, fundamentalist, this is how this law works, now you're in trouble. And explain why, with really just incredibly soul-evoking examples. But there are countless people in life that hurt other people all the time, and they get away with it based on what we would consider justice. They get away with it. They die getting away with it. And then you could say to me, well, I don't think they really get away with it. They're probably going to come back next lifetime, and then someone's going to do the same thing to them, so they learn a lesson. And I would go, I feel you half on the truth there and half off. The truth is, karma is a neutral law. And this is the truth as far as I can see. You got to explore your own life with it and see what's true for you. But I'll offer this. Karma is a neutral law. We have positioned karma primarily out of our religious patterning culturally, as if it's a conscious being that delegates punishment or reward. Now I'm going to check in with you. Do you believe that to be true? Do you believe that there is some arbitrating conscious being somewhere in the cosmos here that is delegating punishment and reward based on actions, choices, etc. that we make? And I'm not making any belief in that right or wrong. I'm going to walk you through it like a technician and see if you still believe it by the time I'm done. And I'm going to point out the detriments of such a belief. But I want you to answer that. Do you actually believe that? And you might say, no, I don't even believe in those sorts of deities. And then I go, okay, well, you've got a book on the law of attraction on your bookshelf. Is there any difference between believing some kind of law does this versus an actual dude with a beard in the sky? Because if we're going to say God punishes sinners, and whatever we define that as religiously, you go to hell, you get smited down, you curse yourself, fill in the blanks religiously, but then turn to spirituality, New Age thought, or philosophy, and say, well, there's this law of attraction that pretty much does the same thing. You know, if you're positive and do good things, well, boom, it's coming right back to you like a boomerang. And by the way, if you're negative, same thing. And what I'm after here is both options are punitive and position karma as a system of punishment and reward. And I am here to suggest that is absolutely false. That karma is a neutral law. If I throw the pin up, I mean, is this good or bad? It's just laws doing laws. Now, let's just imagine this is an axe and I don't know any better and I'm throwing an axe up in the air and it comes down and like hits me in the head or, you know, cuts my arm off. Well, was I being punished for throwing an axe? No, but I have an opportunity now to learn what not to do with an axe, don't I? What the risks are in such a choice. So I would offer you this. Feel it out for yourself. I would offer you this. Karma is never about punishment or reward, and always about learning. Always about learning. As soon as we recruit punishment and reward into ideas, philosophies, thoughts about karma, we just recruited shame with it. And if we just recruited shame with it because we're being punished, what does punishment say? You've done something that makes you not enough. And most of the time, this is how we actually interpret it in our psyche in a shame-based culture. We interpret that to mean I have done something that makes me less than enough. I have done something that makes me perhaps worthless. I have done something that requires redemption of my value. And I'm going to jam you with mystical truth and say, you always have value. It doesn't matter what you do or don't do. That's called soul esteem. It's a mystical law. It's a mystical truth. You have value no matter what you do or don't do. And you might be like, wow, I kind of like that, but I'm not sure about that, Robert. I like it because it means I'm enough as I am right now. Ooh, that feels good. But I'm not sure about it because then that means so is everyone else. And I got a lot of targets out there I've been judging and hoping what goes around does indeed come back around. Yeah. So this is what I mean by dimensions. The human dimension where we are connected to survival patterns like the victim archetype, where we want others punished for having transgressed us or people we love, is going to, of course, interpret karma as punitive. And in that, with those eyes and that kind of human heart, it's hard to look at a murderer and say, you have value and you have the same value I do. Now, you have karmically done something that took the life of another person, perhaps someone I love. But if I'm going to be with mystical truth, and not just when it's convenient and sounds good, this is where I have to sit in mystical truth and go, all right, I don't know if this is true. Maybe somewhere in my own soul's journey of lifetimes, I murdered somebody and had to learn. So I'm going to just assume then, from mystical truth, you're still enough. And it doesn't matter what you do or don't do, because you're part of the all, God, whatever you want to call this, you'll always be enough, and so will I. Yet, what we are in Earth School to learn is how to make choices from enoughness and connection that honor our holism and each other's holism and the holism of the whole earth the best we possibly can. And on that journey, our teacher is karma. Our teacher is cause and effect. So it's just karmic that when I harm another, there's something deep inside, whether it's even conscious or not. I know it's there. That kind of aches. Because when I harm someone, I disconnect from mystical truth. Hey, I just harmed me. Hey, I just judged me. And what karma offers, not as punishment, as a neutral law, is an opportunity to go, wait a minute, that doesn't feel so good. I think I'd rather not be judgmental, not shame people, not be a bully, not be politically, toxically tribal, to where I say things to people on the internet I would never say in person, to where I make someone the other that I can then hate, degrade, make less than. Yeah, that doesn't feel very connecting. So now we're starting to holistically expand and to get to a more holistic, spherical understanding of karma. You're not going to do it with your human heart. We can love the human heart. It's raw, gritty, emotional, but it's judgmental. It's vengeful too. The cosmic heart, the soul's heart, it doesn't carry those energetics, perceptions, and dynamics because it knows, hey, this whole journey of life is learning, and we're going to fuck up. Can that be okay with you? Can that be okay with me? We're going to hurt each other. We're going to, yes, generate karmic consequences that are very painful for both us and perhaps others. But can we learn? Can we learn from that? What are we learning? Interconnectivity. Everything's connected. I have an effect on everything. What are we also learning? It's not just what we do that determines the karmic factors. Now level with me up. It's why we do what we do. So if I'm walking around in a grocery store and I'm talking on my cell phone and I'm just not being very mindful of my environment or who's around me, and I accidentally bump into an elderly person and knock them on the floor, the karmic consequences, perhaps they break their hip. But I wasn't doing that from, this old person, let me just knock him around. I wasn't being mindful. I wasn't paying attention. I was being self-involved, or maybe I was in a very challenging call where I was getting really bad news about the health of a loved one, and I just zoned out. So we look at the karmic consequence, yet that person broke their hip. But if it was from mindlessness or an absorbed focused state because you were getting bad news, now how do you see that? Not only how do you see it, how do you feel it intuitively? Versus someone who actually intends harm, wants to go knock someone over to actually just harm them. Pick a reason. They're not part of your political party. Whatever it is. Pick one. Pick a hateful reason. And now how are you going to see that event? How are you going to feel it in your system? The karma is the same. The karma is the same at the level of cause and effect physically. The person falls and breaks their hip. But it's also not the same. Because if we go to different arenas and dimensions of seeing that karma, then we know, wait a minute, that person had malintent, and this is really a hate crime. Or that person was just getting some bad news, self-absorbed, a moment of being mindless and wasn't paying attention. And the karmic lesson for them is pay attention. Don't shop and talk on your phone. I don't know. It's intuitive. And it would be different from person to person. If you're on a call with bad news, stop, get still, sit down. Or, hey, you have a hateful heart. And there's consequences when you take hate into action. There's a karma for that. And our human justice system, as best as it can, I suppose, tries to adjudicate accordingly. So when you go to a trial or you have some sort of judge mediating a situation in your life or something that's gone down, that is the role of the judge archetype. I have to discern intentionality, karma, and intentionality here. What's the karma and intentionality? Because if you did this from a hate for gay people, or if you did this just because you were being mindless, or you did this because there's a difference in motivation and intention. And there's a scale here of learning that requires a consequence accordingly. So my job as the judge isn't to judge whether you have worth or not. You have worth. We all do. Done. It's whether do you act from worth? And in acting from worth, do you value others as equals? And if you don't, what actions come out of that? What harm is done? And how can you learn another way? So, one thread of many about karma. Just one. What I've learned about karma, I sort of feel like through my tour of duty of doing professional intuitive readings for 15 years, is that it indeed is a co-creative law. It's one of the more obvious ones in a sense, cause and effect. But it's not like a damning, wrathful God. It is a neutral law. The soul lessons, SOUL, SOLE, that come from karmic consequence. And let's also remember, there's good karma. We do generate grace. We do generate connection, love, acts of bravery, heroism. We do that too. So there might be seemingly a slant here on bad karma. Yeah. But I want to keep holistically in the room here. Hey, there's also this other graceful way to learn. That, what you do generate is positive intentionality and focus and action matters. But then again, I'm going to be contrarian. I'm going to be both and. That's because this is how karma is. Then again, let's say we're in a war. It's World War II. And we generally know killing people, not so cool. But we've got a madman to stop who thinks certain people should be wiped off the planet. So if I go into war and into the warrior archetype and kill people in a war because there's genocide going on, then what's the karma for my murders? Is it just simply, I'm going to have to go burn off all the karma for all the people I killed in subsequent lifetimes? I don't think so at all. And even then, does that mean, let's say I'm on the other side, I'm killing people because of their race, because of their religion, because of their sexuality, whatever we can pin hate on, I'm killing them for that. Does that mean in my next lifetime, I'm going to come back and then be killed for the same things? Not necessarily at all. I have learned through soul contract readings, karma doesn't actually not necessarily transmigrate that way. Will you be given another setup / classroom in which you're presented with the opportunity to move from hateful intentions toward people in choice and action? Yeah, you will. But what that is packaged as, well, that's up to the faiths. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a replication of the same things you did to others. Maybe sometimes it is. But do you think this is the only planet you come to? Do you think in this vast cosmos, Earth is it? It ain't. So how we then get put into the learning, well, that's gonna depend. To assume, you know what, that person in a wheelchair, they must have done something real shitty in their last lifetime to get in a wheelchair this lifetime. You ever assume that? You ever assume that about someone with a disability? You ever assume that about somebody who gets cancer? Because our laws of attraction do. And you know what I've seen that shatters all of that? Is I've seen angels come back as homeless people to wake you and I up. I've seen angels come back, yes, as kids that die from leukemia, to wake their parents up, to learn something about the nature of the soul. Not because that kid had it coming from bad karma. That kid was a frickin' bodhisattva angel. And you want to talk karma, fundamentalist karma to me, I ain't interested. Because that is not how some of this rolls at all. And to assume it is, shuts your cosmic heart out. And leaves you just with your vengeful human one. The shame-driven one that thinks, well, you know, I better be a good person or I'm screwed. I'm trying not to swear. And I'm here to tell you, that's got nothing to do with it most of the time. What if that person in a wheelchair has a soul contract just to make you appreciate that day that you can walk? And that's what they're there for. They came back to teach you. It's nothing to do with them. They didn't track shit. So I'm pinging around. And I'm actually using real readings that I've done in here. Real things that I've seen and experienced as an intuitive with the eyes I have. And I have a feeling these aren't that special, these eyes I have. You have eyes like this too. You in yourself have felt when that homeless person was an angel. You just knew. So, what is it you really believe about karma? Really? And do you think, you know, it is just this punitive system? How are those beliefs, perhaps, that hopefully I'm helping you see? How are those really running your reality? And this is really, really, for me, something that I really hope you take in. How are those beliefs running your self-relationship? How you relate to you? And see others in your life. Therefore, how do those karmic beliefs about karma, run how you relate to other people? We do have karmic entanglements with people. If you could think of it this way, lessons to work out. That's actually very real. I've often seen in readings that we have soul groups. We have people that, and I wouldn't necessarily claim it or call it as unfinished business. It's lessons not yet completed. Lessons not yet integrated. So, And that might not be both people have a lesson, just you do, or just they do. Sometimes we just come as the teacher, the other person's the student, and vice versa. And sometimes it's both and. So as you feel what I'm saying, let's take a look at how culture, our culture, has misinterpreted karma. Because it really has. I hope you're starting to get that. Now, the reality that I've seen around transformation and when we come into some new quote unquote enlightenment is this. I think most of us, certainly you watching me, this is probably true, have done a lot of work on ourselves at the level of family systems, family wounds, understanding our trauma, understanding how our trauma shapes how we see the world, feel about ourselves, understanding how shame as a force in our culture and families and religions has shaped our esteem. I would venture to say you've probably done some orb of work, i.e. awakening, transformation, and alchemy in those arenas. But what I've seen less of, if at all, is folks in spirituality, self-help, and healing taking the next step toward culture, toward cultural wounding, cultural misperceptions, cultural beliefs, and yet believing they have and they haven't. So, for example, if I present to you as I am now, karma as a topic of discussion, something to consider as a force that is co-creating your life, and you then hear a lot of what I'm saying, or another teacher, but then it doesn't ever break free from the cultural patterning that's in you. It doesn't, you never go beyond that. That's your limit. Then what I would know is, okay, your approach to karma still has shame in it because this is a shame-based culture and shame is insidious. It's everywhere. We are being reinforced with it daily. And not only that, I'm going to bring this archetype in. We're going to get to karma and archetypes in a minute, a little bit. But not only that, we are a victim-based culture, a culture that thrives on victim entitlement. So now you've got this as it spills out to what is now grievance-based political parties, grievance-based social movements. I'm not making any of this right or wrong. I'm naming technical territory. And in all of that, in the center is the victim archetype that sees this way, that there's things that should and should not happen. There's things you should and shouldn't say, should and shouldn't do. Oftentimes, our victim these days pairs up with the perfectionist, and they start going to town. This is what we call the hyper PC culture. And what we can't say, what we can say, what's offensive, what's not, what re-traumatizes or triggers someone. Instead of, also approaching, and I think there's value in some of this, but instead of also approaching it from the point of view of, hey, get your interior strong enough to handle an insult, or to not look for things to be upset about, or to be offended by. How about that, too? The both and here. And this is coming from me, who's a gay man, who knows very well what it's like to get insulted for being who I am. I came up in the 80s and 90s. I'm not part of the generation now that had Glee and all these other shows. I'm from the generation where you got the shit kicked out of you. I had friends that end up in hospitals. And I had many, many, many people die of AIDS that I knew. So I want to ground you in, I am playing. I know the reality of all this as well. And I definitely know the victim archetype quite well myself. And I'm not making it wrong. We need to befriend this part of us and understand the difference between the mystical victim and the shadow victim, because there's a big one. And this comes full circle to karma, full circle. So as you, back to my point, look at your own limits of transformation and self-relationship and shift in relationships with others and you in the world when it comes to karma, anything really, but we're talking about karma, I want you to consider, hey, am I still held in cultural patterning here? If so, how? And how would I know? Well, that's a massive question that I can't blow out here, but I can give a couple threads of insight. One, by the time you get to the cultural frontier of your consciousness and your patterns, what lies beyond is your mystical self, your soul. And let me just throw this in here. The soul is not a cultural being. It's a celestial one. The soul is not Republican or Democrat or Christian or Muslim, male or female. The energy may be more male or female. It's energetic, but it is not fused in cultural identities like these. So, whenever we take on any perspective of cosmic creative law, like karma, or magnetics and attraction, we have to take a minute and go, am I interpreting and perceiving this law from the celestial eyes or the cultural ones, or a little bit of both? And where would I be misperceiving something like karma because I'm seeing it too much from the cultural standpoint of eye for an eye? What goes around comes around. So if I see a homeless person, wow, they must have really screwed up their last lifetime. Here's what you will run into. You will not see with the eyes of an angel. You see with the eyes of your shadow or the culture shadow in the areas that you have not yet let go of. Now, what would hold you in place with this? Feel that out for a minute. What would hold you in place with cultural eyes? Because this is the thing. I'm telling you, when we start talking about being co-creators and working with things like karma as co-creators, we better understand all the co's in that. There's a lot of co's. It's not just me and the divine. It's you and your whole tribe, your whole culture, and now your whole, I don't know, political party, you and your whole whatever, your whole belief systems. Those are all co's in your creative process. All of them. And then you go to the archetypes in your tribes. I don't know, are you part of any tribes that have a real strong victim archetype? And that leads perception. That leads the esteem system and what one defines as power or being disempowered. Is that true? I mean, honestly, it's true for all of us on some level. Let me just have a human moment with you. But this is how you begin to negotiate things like karma from a completely different perspective. Look, I'm not going to see through what the Hindus said about it. That's a cultural lens. And a religious one, or what the Buddhists said about it. Hey, get off the wheel of incarnation by becoming enlightened and burning off all your karma. That kind of just sounds like I'm going to, be punished and made to reincarnate again and again till I get it right. But in mystical law and truth and the soul, there's no right to get. There's just learning. There are souls that don't even if you will, have to come back here to keep learning, but they do. They're called bodhisattvas. They come back. Why? To help us learn more. Because they realize, hey, I'm connected to it all. Another tour of duty on Earth? Why not? I'll wake a few more people up. So even in Buddhism, there's a scramble to get off the wheel of incarnation. Why? What's that about? This is part of God. This is part of heaven. Are we in a heaven and earth dualistic split? Okay, let's just name that. That's cultural, by the way. Do you see where I'm going here? I could rip through your system intuitively and thread out every cultural thread in you that dominates your perceptions of things like karma, things like reincarnation. And I'm not making it right or wrong. I'm naming it the technical territory. And if we do that, then what do we get? Clear perspectives, clear intuition, and empowered choices. And now, guess what? We are beginning to, if you will, not that I believe you really can, but master karma. Or let's say it this way, work with karma masterfully. I don't think we're ever done learning. So let me shift gears for a sec. Take a minute, let that settle. I'm going to take a few cues, by the way, on karma in a minute, so just stay tuned. So one of the things I want to kind of bring up for you to consider is this, karma and shame. There's been, speaking of culture, a yoking together of all ideas of karma with shame. And that's where we get this more punitive-based sense about, bad things happen if you do bad things, good things happen if you do good things. This is a universal system of justice that operates on punishment and reward. No. Near as I can tell, there's just no gods up there or God or anything smiting people down. But do we receive the karmic consequences of things we've done? Yeah. But it's not punishment. It's rather, hey, you're here to learn how to co-create through choice and action and how intentionality, choice and action generate consequence. So you have to then absorb and receive a consequence and consequences that come from your intentions, choices, and actions to do that. It's just, there's the simple part of karma. There's the simplicity of it. Now, what's the complexity of it? Well, as I mentioned, intentionality gets into murky waters. And we have to then talk about how soul contracts actually operate, which is a huge topic. And then, as I just mentioned, the bodhisattva archetype. What about the soul that incarnates into life to, if you will, absorb someone else's karma to help them learn from it? That happens too. And how do you know that's what you're seeing or experiencing or what's happening in a relationship or in your family systems or in culture versus someone, coming back from another life and reincarnating to experience the fundamentals of a lesson they weren't able to fully integrate. Now, here's the thing. I said fundamentals because that's what it is. It's about the lesson and its fundamental teaching. The package of the lesson doesn't matter. Whatever works best. But the fundamental of the lesson, that's what's important in if you want to transmigrate lifetime to lifetime. Remembering this ain't the only place we come to. We go to other places where creative laws work differently. Dimensions are simply different. So if we come to shame and the cultural edge of our ideas on karma and cultural edge of our beliefs within karma, then we can start to look at how, in fact, something like religion and its ideas of a damning, wrathful God of some kind just sort of transplanted itself into New Age language and then got called the law of attraction, when there's really no difference. Because in religious ideas, you're a good person, and if you're not, you go to hell. And in the law of attraction ideas, you're a good person, and if you're not, you get just a bunch of negative crap come into your life. Do you know? Look around your life. There are tons of people that are ridiculously negative, frankly awful. And they're surrounded by a lot of good stuff. Now, what's also true is if we're kind of in this place of feeling awful or just not feeling connected to ourselves, you can't outsmart your system. You can't positively affirm your system. Your system does what it does, and the systems of life do what they do. So I will tell you, personally, I have worked with billionaires that are absolutely miserable. And I've worked with people that don't have that kind of money, that are so self-connected, creatively engaged, in a wonderful netted community. Both and. I've seen both. And then I know people who maybe have lots and lots of money that are like radiant beams of the sun. We have to see clearly, leave behind formula and belief to see what's true. And when it comes to karma, this is the next thread I'll offer. It's not as formulaic as you might think. And yet, it is based on cause and effect, which is sort of a formula, both and. So, when you have karmic entanglements with someone, how do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know you have a karmic, let's say karmic contract with somebody? Because we do have those. How do we know? Well, one thing is we look to our noble adversaries, as they say in Buddhism. These people that come into our lives to teach us lessons in self-connection, self-love, compassion, empowerment, grace. And how do they teach that to us? By being a noble adversary, by being somewhat adversarial toward us in some way. So every bully that I ever encountered growing up as a gay kid was one of my noble adversaries. Because they taught me who I didn't want to be. They taught me to stand up for anybody being bullied. I was the kid on the playground in grade school and high school that stood up for everybody. Because I knew what it was like to be bullied. Especially when I got physically bigger and could fight and got a black belt in Taekwondo. Then it was on. I had, true story, a high school student that obviously I went to high school with, contact me maybe 15 years, 20 years after we graduated and saw what I do now. And he wrote me, and we were track mates together. I was really good in track, and he was one of those jock types, football guys, calling people faggot, he was that kind of guy. And we got along all right, but he puffed around like that to, somehow feel more empowered. And he said to me, he wrote me an email to my website, and he said, I'll never forget the day that you shook all of us down, all the jocks in geometry, because we were making fun of this guy, Frank. And Frank was a nerd. And I, for all intents and purposes, was a jock. I was the best athlete in my high school. I was a junior Olympic track athlete. I was very well known in my town. I broke city records, took second at state freshman year. I'm just saying that to give context, not to gloat, because nothing ever really went after that. I went to, gave up scholarships and went out and came out as gay. That's the options I had in 1990. But just to frame that, I was a better athlete than all of them. And they were making fun of him in class. And I stood up and I looked at them and I said, why don't you shut the fuck up? Why are you picking on him? This is bullshit. And they thought I was kidding. Oh, yeah, Hado, that's funny. I said, I'm not kidding. Shut up. And really, you should apologize to Frank. Would you feel better? You feel more empowered now? Then they knew I wasn't kidding. He wrote me and he said, I'm not surprised to see the help you offer people and who you are in the world, because I never forgot that day you stood up to us for bullying Frank. He goes, I'm not that man anymore. And I'm not that man partly because of you. So when it comes to karmic entanglements, what creates one for you? How do they roll? How do they operate? Well, one sign is shadow dancing. One sign is, hey, I'm triggered by what you're doing, and I'm going to have to speak up to your bully, or I'm going to have to find a way to shut that bully down, or we're going to shadow dance. We're going to go back and forth. It's going to get ugly. My shadow whatever is going to meet your shadow whatever, and we're going to shadow it out. Because the shadow dance doesn't shut down when you have two shadow archetypes going head to head. It blows up. It shuts down when you have a love rebel, like I did, shut down a bully. That's part of karma. And look at the karma that I didn't even know I generated for this fellow student who years later, out of nowhere, wrote me that email. I was bawling my eyes out. I'll never forget that day that I stood up for Frank, because I knew what it was like to be him. So now we enter into the realm of archetypes and karma. And if you missed this last week, well, gosh, sorry, it wasn't actually last week. This was quite a while ago, but I did talk about one archetype in particular. And this is what inspired a bit of this for me to do this, was I brought up why, if you're an overgiver, you don't karmically receive. One would think if you're giving and giving and giving, well, karma would say it's all going to come back to you. But guess what? It doesn't. You know why? Because overgivers, that archetype doesn't know how to receive. It's not wired to receive. Now, if you want to know more about that, you can go watch that. It's on YouTube. The real reasons why overgivers seldom receive. But my point for now is that this is coming back to karma. This is about karma and archetypes now. And I could go on and on. And I do. And in fact, let me just introduce you right now to what is sponsoring this social live. And that is my course, Change Your Karma, Change Your Life, which is discounted at $150 off right now till the end of the month, by the way. This is a 14-hour journey into the things I'm telling you now. So lesson 4, alone. There's 6 lessons here, 2 hours each. It's an audio course. I created this before there was really any options to create video courses. But I go into soul contracts, soul groups, and karma. I go into all sorts of arenas when it comes to relationship karma entanglements, karma and archetypes. How do you actually break a karmic tie with an archetype, let alone someone else? What are your rogue archetypes? And then that's just lesson 4. Here's a little bit of something from lesson 5. And I'm going to actually thread off of this and talk some more. Because here's what I want you to really get. This is one of the fundamental lessons in the room around karma right now. And I go deep into it in this course. And that is, you need to understand, you really got to get this. I think COVID taught us this and brought up things for us to absorb more than anything. What group karma is. And how you are, and I go deep into this in lesson 5 in this course. Just check that out. Go to ohado.com. It's right on the homepage, and you can check it out. It's my sponsor for this particular live. Now, let me thread out here for a minute, and then I'll look at some of your questions. We often throw around this term that we're in this era of the co-creator. I throw it around, and it's true. But what we don't absorb often in talking about being in an era of being a co-creator, once again, I said this earlier, is all the co's. I think having grown up in the 80s and 90s as a gay child into young adult, I got schooled very quickly on co's in co-creation. For example, I would have loved to have co-created an empowered sense of self at 18, 19 years old, at 15. That would have been amazing for me. But because I lived in a culture and still do live in a culture that says you shouldn't say gay to young kids, you shouldn't say gays in school, you shouldn't get married. It's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Because I grew up with that and understanding, okay, it's not real possible for me at 18 to co-create in 1990 a real healthy, robust sense of power for me, because every time I leave my front door, I could get bullied, beat up. I will never forget Matthew Shepard. So I learned, as does any minority, as does any woman, what it's like to be in a co-creative grid on this planet. And the co-factors of creation here, like homophobia, like racism, like misogyny. So if we're going to talk about karma, and if we're going to have real discussions as intuitive adults, co-creative adults, about what it means to co-create, what karma is, it's time, if you want to step into the era of the co-creator, to go bigger in your co's. When I first started with my first publisher, there was a lot of teachings that centered around positivism and being in this positive bubble where anything that you wanted could happen. And that is bullshit. Because anything that becomes possible for any of us in our lives as a co-creative option is built on the backs of those that were before us. My options are built on Greg Louganis, Harvey Milk, Matthew Shepard. African Americans, their options are built on Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks. And you can go down the list. When Oprah Winfrey happened, she was able to happen because there was enough of a karmic tip in culture for her brilliance to take center stage and command a talk show for 25 years. Had she been 5 years earlier, 10 years earlier, that would not have been able to happen. So when I do readings, and this is where I get this from, I'm looking at the complete karmic grid of you. I want to know your grid karmically. What are the forces of cause and effect in your system? Not just what did you choose today, but what did the culture choose for you today? That maybe makes something not possible for you until there's a love rebellion that does. And we are recycling back right now, worldwide, to this truth. You know, you might want to go build a wonderful, awesome home on the beaches of Florida. But I'll tell you what, you better check in with the karma of climate change before you do, as we just learned. Because that karma has something else it might want to say to you that might inform whether you actually do that now. I remember 10 years ago, I started to get in readings, data, information, and impressions about people that would come to me for relocation or business development when it came to real estate. And I was getting impressions. Don't build in Florida. Don't watch out for Arizona. I'd stay out of the desert areas. If you're there, get in and out. You got 10 years to get in and out because before long, it'll be inhabitable. It'll be 140 degrees in the summer. And here we are. So when you look at karma, let's just start with the Earth's grid. What forces of karmic influence are whipping through your life every day that you have not even looked in the eye? And yet perhaps, maybe back when, you voted for someone to set in motion the negative karma that's affecting you now, all under the umbrella of some sort of political identity, instead of the soul. I've lived this. I've watched relatives vote out my rights my whole life. Karmically set dominoes up so that one of my brothers hangs on a fence in Wyoming. You want to get real? We're getting real. And these forces, I want you to know about them. I want you to think about them because they're already in the room. And henceforth, more and more, we cannot go to Fairy Taleville with our stories of karma. The reason why we want karma to be good people get good things is because we want to control fate and destiny. If I'm good, well, great. Good's on the way. You could be just a beautiful, generous person, but that's not going to stop a hurricane that's set in motion by the karmic laws of the atmosphere and the climate of this planet. You're not opted out. So you can take what I said, this is a very macro view of karmic forces, and I want you to bring it in. What internal hurricanes, climate change, things are going on in you that you can have the best of visions, dreams, inspirations, and intentions. But if you don't know the other forces in the grid, because every creative thing we all do, whatever it is, as soon as it leaves your intentionality through choice and action, it hits the grid, karmic grid of life. And then whether it fruits, goes further, doesn't, is going to be based on those greater forces that are far more powerful than you or I. Now, I'm not saying racism or homophobia or misogyny are more powerful than us at all. I know they're not. But I am telling you, do you know how we got to gay marriage? Lots of love rebellions, lots of pride marches, lots of friends in the hospital that were gay bashed because we kept the rebellion going until the dominoes finally tipped. And I'm not saying this in any other regard than to teach you how this works, because it works the same for all of us. And perhaps more poignantly, we are in my country right now, an election cycle. And I'm watching folks once again get spellcast into trivial things and missing the greater karmic forces sweeping in. And I hope to the gods, before they vote, they see those forces and go, whoa, I ain't voting for that. You know, quick story. on this vein. I am and there's a reason why I'm this, but I am a registered independent here in Colorado. We're called unaffiliated. So I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I have primarily, except for a few times, always voted Democrat because the Democrats are the only party that have ever stood up for LGBTQ people. And I remember back in the 90s when I was in a relationship and we were at dinner with my partner and I and this other couple, and they were gay Republicans. And I remember thinking, I'm really curious about this. I've never really met any. And, this is the 90s, okay? We have no rights. We can't get married. We can get fired for being who we are. And so I asked him, I said, why do you support Republicans? This is a party that inherently, karmically, would just as soon see you wiped off the map. Converted, a conversion camp, something. Well, we support them because we like their tax policies, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, what is it going to matter if, when it comes to tax policies, you get fired for being gay and have no income? What does that even matter? Do you have your karmic priorities lined up in the best way for you, do you think? I don't know. What do you think? I mean, tax policies, okay. We can have a discourse on that. Absolutely. But it's not going to matter if you're fired for who you are, is it? Is it? And that's what I mean by getting caught up in things so other forces can take power and move karma and then scapegoat another party or others as if what happened because of them, not us. Wow. Interesting thing to think about with climate change. Now, once again, and let me just pull this thread in. For those of you that are like, oh, crap, Robert just went political. I hate it. How dare he do politics and spirituality? Oh, okay, let's go there. Let's start to think about and I mean this with love. I do. I really do. We got to bring the love. It's got to be a love rebellion. But let's start to think about what the karma is for blah, blah, blah. So you tell me, what's the karma for not talking about politics within spiritual circles? What's the karma for that? Let me offer a possibility. Maybe the karma is politics loses a soul. It doesn't get a soul because we decided the soul and politics don't go together and we're not going to talk about it. It's too uncomfortable. I want you to think as a karmic technician and realize there is karma for things. So I actually made a little list. That was actually one of the things on my list. What's the karma of our words? What's the karma for me as a gay man with the word faggot? Yeah, triggering, uncomfortable. Yeah. How do you think it is to be called that? Well, I'll tell you, that karma looks like, Matthew Shepard hanging on a fence in Wyoming. That's where that karma goes. What about the karma for a conspiracy theory? What about the karma of our politics and not having spirituality in the room of political debate, discourse, and discussion? I want you to feel in yourself these answers. I'm giving you some front-loaded things, but that's just to give a door open for you to find yourself, because here's what's true. Karma works as a collective co-creative system as well. We decide often karma. What if we just decided as a society that, and this is what's happening in Iran right now, women just really are second-class citizens. So cover them up. Do it, what name, religion, whatever, just cover them up. And they don't get a vote, they don't get rights. Well, what kind of karma did we just create for women as a society? Go down the line. What if we just decided, hey, murder's fine. You killed someone? Oh well. What's the karma for that? Yeah, what's the karma for acting like we can just pump all this stuff in this atmosphere and plastic in our oceans and, oh well. And this is the thing about karma. I'm gonna leave you with these things to meditate on. Because it is a neutral law. Meaning, it doesn't take sides. It does not take sides. The only side it takes is the side of holism. The side that everything interconnects, everything affects the other. That's the side karma takes, if you even can call it that. Because all it is, karma is just an expression of cause and effect that is bound to all as one mystical law. That's what it is. It doesn't care if you're Democrat. It doesn't care if you're Republican. It doesn't care if you believe or don't believe in climate change. It just does cause and effect. Now, this is where, we enter into the shadow. I'm in the shadow with you. You're probably triggered all over the place. And that's totally fine. But we live in a time where we just had this man, Alex Jones, who for years kept saying that these people who lost their kids to a shooter, and it was all a hoax. What was the karma for that? Their lives were threatened. They were harassed nonstop. They were stalked. So many horrible things happened from one person recruiting and activating in his audience a lie. What's the karma of our gun laws in this country? We're living it. We're living it. So here's what I want you to consider. Do you even really want to work with the law of karma? Sometimes it's better to think, well, it's this being I can sort of petition to be on my side through this and that. Being positive, or confession at the end of the week, with a priest, or absolving myself of my wrong, something. Well, do you want to work with the law of karma on its real terms of cause and effect? Do you? Because it's a it's a truth teller, man. It is a truth teller like no other. And most of us, and I'm throwing myself in here, I'm human, I'm flawed, I'm messy. Truly. Most of us want to work with karma on our terms. And what that usually tends to mean, when I say our terms, our human terms, we want to work with karma on the terms of our wounded human, low esteem ego. And that means that we want to work with karma on the terms of our shadow patterns that manage our low esteem and wounded human ego. Not only that, those patterns that manage our wounded esteem, those patterns that do that have become identity, like the shadow victim, like the shadow Republican, shadow Democrat. We want karma as our weapon when it's just a neutral law. And the only allegiance, if you want to call it that it has is holism. So karma says, yeah, you can sit there and pour carbon into the atmosphere and create a story that it does nothing and it's all a hoax. Fine, I'm still going to warm the planet. You can make up a story that the planet's warming because, it's just what it does. It has nothing to do with man-made effects. And I will warm the planet at twice the speed. Triple. Do you know right now that there are glaciers melting in Iceland? This is to look at the complexities and interactivity of karma. Glaciers in Iceland that are melting. And you know what those glaciers do? They keep the volcanoes there from exploding. In 2010, there was a volcano that exploded in Iceland that contaminated the whole world's atmosphere and canceled thousands of air travel flights for quite some time. So while we're being coaxed to hate each other or get politically tribal, this is what karma's doing. It's melting the glaciers that have compacted down volcanoes from erupting in Iceland, that if they erupt, might be game over for everybody. Karma's that big. So, do you really want to work with it? It is a co-creative truth teller. Like no other, really, that I've ever seen. It's both simple and, at the same time, dimensionally quite complex. It's never punitive, but always it's a teacher. For those who can learn the lesson, and I'll finish on this, for those who can learn the lesson. What karmic lessons in your life can you even learn? Where are you actually teachable? That's a shadow question. Why is it a shadow question? Because it takes you right into your back door, and you have to ask yourself, still haven't learned the lesson that a poor diet makes me feel bad. I'm not teachable there. I like to eat junk food, candy, whenever I want late at night. I think I'm giving you a little bit of my karma here, especially around Halloween. Where are you not teachable? And that is really where I would point you next. That's what my course takes on. Where would you not be willing or able to learn a lesson, and why? What I would say is you just compounded fate. Karma as fate right there. And then what does it take to finally become teachable? Well, it takes a dark night. It takes a dark night cycle, a dark night journey to become teachable, where you are unteachable by karma. Now, can you learn its lesson? Why can't you? Shadow questions, they take us into our blind sides. There's sort of that truth that hurts so good, but hurts, And these are blind sides you don't even know exist in you. Why wouldn't you be teachable? Why aren't you teachable? Listen, I'm sure I got into some triggering territory for everybody, and I actually, I'm not going to apologize for that, because I think it's good. This is how we grow. This is how we learn. Triggering is one of the best teachers. And there's different types of triggering. I should just do a social live on triggering. It's like 3 different categories of triggering I've seen. But let me just say, take in what you're able to for now. I think this sort of territory can feel like a 2x4, because karma kind of can feel that way. This simple saying that something new comes from something new. If nothing changes, nothing changes. These things that we hear, right? But this is where we pull in and go, yeah, that's what karma's always telling us. You're not going to get something new from the same old patterns. You're not. We know this. We live it. So become teachable. Become curious. And please don't, if you can help it, let negative karmic consequences just reinforce a sense of worthlessness. You're already worthy. Learning from karma is not about getting to enough. It never has been. It never will be, because it is your nature to be worthy. Period. What it is about is, it's about co-creating. What kind of world? What kind of life? How do we want to co-create? But we can't co-create a new world if we won't learn the lessons of the old world, the lessons of our history. No matter what political spins in the air, definitely check out this course. Please, please, please. This is ridiculously discounted. I did that because I want as many people to be able to afford taking it as possible. It's only discounted for 10 days. Get on it. It covers what I've said and so much more. It's a 14-hour, powerful and incredible journey. It is an audio course, however. Just know that. It's got worksheets in there to help you work through your karma and to understand and see karma. And I identify multiple different types of karma that I've seen. And I would never claim like this is the last word on karma. Oh my gosh, this teacher, this creative law. It's so much more than I ever thought it was. I remember putting that course together and just changed my life. Anyway, okay. So some of you have already taken the course. Yeah, it's a professional audio recording done in a studio, so it's like high quality. I'm just saying. Any questions, everyone? Anyone? How does one break a soul contract? Crystal asks. Let's put this up. All right, I'll talk about this for a sec. It's actually in the course in depth, but I'm going to relanguage that in alignment with kind of the subject, which is, let's just say it this way. How do you break a karmic tie? How do you actually do that with someone in your life? Let me language it a few different ways so that we all feel the question in the holism of it. How do we learn a lesson with someone? How do we grow past a pattern and the shadow dancing we're doing with someone? Right? This is all the same question, really. You're welcome, Jill Angelo. That is, I think, something, and I teach this in the course, that needs to be done on multiple holistic levels, but the most powerful is archetypal. And the reason why that is the most powerful, and what I mean by archetypal is you begin to understand what your shadow dancing with someone is about and the archetypes that are doing that. So I talked in my last social live about the overgiver and the vampire. There's a shadow connection there. There's a shadow exchange. Someone who overgives magnetically is archetypally matched with takers. And anyone who would be generous to an overgiver is repelled by an overgiver, because an overgiver doesn't know how to receive, because the overgiver's esteem system is set up to be needed as a way to feel valued, not to receive as a way to feel valued. Now, once again, you can go look at that. It's on YouTube. Go watch that video for more. But for now, that layer, let's work with that. And your question: if I'm an overgiver and I have a soul contract with takers. I'm also, now if I'm looking at it karmically, right, this overgiving karma sucks. What are some of the consequences, cause and effects of overgiving? Drained. Now we could take drained and go in a lot of different directions. I don't know, drained financially, drained energetically, drained emotionally. We're not wired as human beings to constantly give. Just like, we have to resource ourselves with food, we eventually have to take in something to receive something. Or we die. Now, You could go metaphorical there. We die creatively. We die spiritually. Our spirit feels like it's gone. I mean, all true. So how am I going to break a contract, a karmic tie, with the takers in my life? When I say archetypal, I found to be the most powerful, what I mean is I got to understand the shadow dance. There's a shadow connection, a shadow match. And it's I, as an overgiver, match to vampires, narcissists, addicts, anyone that I can try to rescue, give, and create an intimacy based on me being needed because of their chaos or their narcissism. Okay, how am I going to break that? Well, first you got to understand the archetypes just like I just did. You got to understand the match. What's going on? How are we matched? How are we yin and yang here? Once you get that down, and that's just one of many archetype matches. I could go to unrequited lover. What's the karma for that? So live in this question. What's the karma for this? What's the karma for this? And that what that does, what's the karma? What's the karma if I'm an overgiver and I stay in matching with takers? Well, if you're an overgiver, I'm going to say, look at your damn life and do an inventory because the karmic results are already in the room. But let's say let's riff off to another archetype. Let's say you are a, unrequited lover. And you're always attracting in, matching with people who, in the end, are not going to requite you, that are not available, whether that's emotionally, whether that's maritally, they're married and they ain't leaving their spouse for you. No matter what story you come up with, or they feed to you, ain't happening. Whether it's they locationally are so far that it's going to not work because neither of you are moving or putting the energy really into seeing each other in a way that would make it work so someone moves. Whether it's they're emotionally shut down. And what they really want is for you to process their emotions for them. You'll never be reciprocated emotionally because they can't give you an intimacy they don't have with themselves emotionally. And you're going to sit there in the story, the victim story of the unrequited lover, and talk about how, they just don't see your needs. They don't see you. You're invisible. Yeah, you are. To you. To you. So, okay, now we got invisible child here. We got a team constellating. And now you bring in people that can't see you. Because you don't see you. And you start to realize, wow, I match with people that don't see my needs. Yeah, you don't see your own needs. Your whole esteem is about, I need them to need me. To rescue, to fix, I don't know, something. And then you start to realize, look at all these karmic ties. And then I'm going to say, yeah, what's the karma for all that? The first place I'm going to always point you, honestly, is self-connection. It's the quickest and most ground zero read to give yourself. And it's this. Does relating to a vampire disconnect me from myself? Why, yes, Robert, it sure does. Does relating to a narcissist pull me off center and disconnect me from myself? Sure does. Now we got some karma. Hey, you know what the karma 101 is? You self-disconnect when you're in the presence of these people. And then connection for you starts to become about whether or not they feed energy back to you. So, vampire. Well, the vampire is a seductive archetype. Welcome to Halloween. Maybe I'll talk about that next Friday. But the vampire is a seductive narcissist. It's not just this black hole. It's a calculated, magnetic, seducing type of black hole. It says, ooh, you so fine, let me in. Let me into your life. Let me into your house. You got things I need. I need you. I need your blood. And when your esteem is set up such that, wow, you need me. Really? That means you won't abandon me. Sink 'em right here, baby. You've got a karmic tie. There are karmic, and the momentum will build. There's something called karmic momentum. God, I wish I could just, just in the class. I actually go into the 9/11 event karmically in this class as a karmic technician with some incredible stories. Incredible. About that karmic event being in the karmic field of the world well before it happened. And how it took 200 years to build up to that tipping point and why. You build karmic momentum within these patterns. They build a momentum. And then therefore, how do you break a soul contract? How do you, coming back to Crystal's question, I know I'm all over the place a little bit here, but how do you then unmatch? So I think I gave some clues there. I go deep into that in the course. I love that question though. Thank you. That said, definitely check out the course. Change a comma, change your life. I think it's a really one of my, and I was just reviewing it and all the things I taught in it. It's just a classic, true classic around karma at a great price that I hope works for you. I'll see you next Friday. Namaste. And happy Halloween for those of you who practice, Halloween. Do we practice Halloween? Celebrate Halloween? I don't know what we do with Halloween, but happy Halloween. I'll see you next week. Namaste.